This month on Kingston Live, one of Kingston's most unique resources, Joe's Musical Instrument Lending Library. Plus, hear all about Deux Trois' sound, their new album, and the premiere of their new single, Good News. Hi.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm Johnny San.
I'm Riley Jabour.
And this is Kingston Live, where we discuss everything happening in the first capital of Canadian music. So at the time of this recording, YGK Craft Beer Fest was, like 3 days ago?
That sounds about right.
Just a few days ago, yeah. And we were there. Riley Jabour, how did you enjoy it?
It was good. It was a really good lineup, I found, for the musical guests were great. Great energy. Lots of people. I think I heard that it was a twice as big turnout as last year, and last year was huge too.
Well, there was a lot of people there, yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it, and great beers, of course.
I was going to point out, actually, I'm not a drinker at all, and I had a great time. The music was great, everybody was having fun, the food was great, it was just, the weather was perfect.
This is an odd way for, an odd way to describe it, but you can tell it's fun for everybody because the dogs that were there, it's a dog-friendly festival, and the dogs were having a great time.
There were a lot of dogs,
yeah.
Yes.
Kingston is very much a dog place.
Yes.
You know?
Riley, were you there the whole time?
I showed up.
I left maybe 3, 4 o'clock or something like that. I can only take so much. I'm kind of a vampire these days. I have my limits for the sun, but yeah, you were there.
I'm much paler than you, I should point out as well. I can take
true.
Very little sun, but I was there. I got there just around the time Lost Cousins was going on, which I think is about 1:45-ish, and I stuck it out until they told me, you have to stop drinking, please go home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see the wilderness?
Yeah, and what a set they put on. That was so good.
They're wonderful.
They really are.
Yeah, I was sorry I missed the I was sorry I missed the wilderness. No, actually, Jonas was here earlier today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, because I don't know if you guys know this, but what I usually do around here is things like voiceovers, and there's a client who needed an English voice, like a legit English voice, and I was like, I don't have any English. Wait a second.
Yes.
I know somebody who might be able to do this, and he hadn't done any voice work before, but he was really, really good. I'm hoping the client likes it. We'll see what happens.
He has his speaking voice, he has a nice lower part of his register.
Yeah.
And so I imagine that depending on the way that you EQ his vocal, that would really shine, actually.
Yeah, he has a resonance
narration.
to his voice
Absolutely.
that really lends itself to voiceover. And I find that performers, like singers in particular, a lot of them have an easier time sort of transitioning into voiceover because they're just used to performing and using their voices and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Riley Jabour, do you want to tell the listener who these mysterious voices are?
I would love to. Though Deux Trois has only been a band for a couple of years now, they're far from unfamiliar to the Kingston music scene. Members of Deux Trois have been involved in an array of local acts, ranging from singer Nadia Pacey's solo electronic project, Koenig, to bands like Warmer, Carvings, and P.S. I Love You. So what do you get when you combine several members with varying musical styles? You get something unique in the city's musical patchwork. The band's 2018 debut album, Health, combines elements of 80s new wave and post-punk with indie rock. Think Susie and the Banshees meets the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Heavy on atmosphere and tone with an emphasis on guitars and percussion. But it's not just about sound with Deux Trois. The band's visual style and aesthetic are equally thoughtful and distinct, with their dark, moody videos and graphics perfectly complementing the band's music. In early May, Deux Trois also released a new single, Monday to Friday. And in the next few months, the band is preparing for the release of their new record, which fans can expect before the end of the year. Deux Trois, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So we have Nadia and Ben are with us.
Yeah.
Hello.
Just context again for the listener. We are going to talk about the new music coming out. I need to take a moment to talk about the previous album, which for the listener, I'm holding in my hands right now because I'm kind of a geek that way. Now, several months ago, our writer, Peter, who I think you guys corresponded with a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. He was telling me, you got to listen to Deux Trois. And I was like, okay. So I watched the videos. I love the videos. I love the songs. But to prepare for this discussion, I figured I wanted more of a genuine impression. So I went to Something Else Records, because I knew Matt had a copy of the album, like the record there, and I brought it home, and it's basically all I've listened to for the last week. This is a great album. I love this music, but Riley and I were talking about this before you guys arrived. We're trying to sort of pinpoint exactly what it is about this music. I think for me, it's sort of the intrepidity of it. There's just a fearlessness to the performances, to the whole approach. What's the sound to you guys? Because I know Pete had a hard time defining it too. We were talking on the phone. He's like, I don't know how to write about this band. What's the approach? Yeah.
Well, for Health, I mean, the approach it happened in several different chunks. I came on way later, almost like just over a month before we went into the studio, and it was just Ben and Nadia had been writing these songs for, a year?
Well, Dave and Salt were written at the same time, and Caves in My Cheeks. But that was approximately 3 years before this record was made, and they were electronic demos. I asked Benjamin Nelson to work on some stuff with me. He had been experimenting more with bass because he had his own project, Slow High, where he was playing the bass. When he came on and we started trying to translate these electronic demos into a live band sound, I don't know, he was just really able to help me translate this band vision that I had when I originally made them. I'd originally intended for them to have a live band arrangement. After he came on, they went through many different iterations. In my music, and in the music that I have most interest pursuing, I'm looking for a specific vision whenever I'm writing a full record. With the next record, my original...
sort of a concept for the album? Yeah.
I would say that I mostly deal in concept writing, conceptual stuff. I'm looking for a specific story arc in an album. With this particular record, I was talking a little bit about mental illness and the way that darkness and the reality of that in daily life plays against lightness, and that's lightness of being. Being able to see the difference between health and ill health. It's really hard to see it, actually, when you're ill. So I was trying to look at that, looking at how am I going to be able to have that subsist throughout an entire record, and how will the audience be able to feel it? How is it going to be implicit in the record without the audience even necessarily being able to name it? It's really hard to pinpoint a genre as well when you are thinking about it in those terms. But I think that what you said, what did you say? You said post-punk and new wave. So yeah, because of the different styles of music that we all enjoy the most. Benjamin Nelson is no longer in the band, but his influences are largely made up of post-punk and new wave bands, whereas Ben is coming from a big punk background, like an encyclopedic knowledge of that scene and that culture. And I like pop music. I love pop music. I love Ariana Grande, and I love Nicki Minaj, and I love Beyonce, I like Kanye, I like Drake, and I was coming from a love of Kanye and Drake and Rihanna when we were producing the record.
Well, I think I'm glad you say that, because you can hear it all. It's all there. There are elements of pop and sort of electronic elements. And you mentioned the bass. There's a very heavy bass presence as well. That punk element is there. And it's neat to hear that now, because the album makes a little more sense. Because all those things are there. That's really cool.
Yeah. And with the record, it was produced by Matt Rogalski. And he really helped us create a world with the record. We worked very closely, him and I, on the producing. When it comes to the vision, I'm pretty hard hitting. I do my very best to not settle for any less than than what I see in my mind's eye, and that's usually pretty difficult to communicate to people. And so like I'm trying not to settle for anything less, but then at the same time, it's just an idea. So like, what is less than the idea? What does that mean? So Matt was a really wonderful person to work with for that, because he's an experimentalist. He wants to experiment with stuff. So when I'm, consistently asking for new edits and versions and sitting right with him, engineering it all and mixing it all, and we get to the 11th version, and that's the one, him being so willing as a producer was really important for us to get the record that we wanted. And because we had just brought Ben on right before we had gone into the studio, everything had to be done piece by piece. And that also plays into the way that the sound feels. So with this new record, my goal in its production was to translate the raw sound of the live band. It wouldn't be the record that I needed if I wasn't getting a live off the floor mix, all of the instruments playing at once, me singing at the same time. I needed the rawness because of the vision that I had pitched to the band, which was specifically, I want a spectrum. The concept is this album is going to go from one end of a spectrum to the other. The first end is R&B. The second end is punk. How are we going to do it? What does it sound like? And I think we were successful.
I think, yeah, I would agree.
But it's hard to say. It doesn't really sound like either of those.
It's definitely like filtered through our, because we also brought on Laura Kelly as drummer while we were doing pre-pro for the new album. And so she brings a whole other slew of influences to the band. So it's definitely as filtered through sort of four people in different corners of the musical world trying to make that vision happen.
Well, again, I think that's so cool because there are all these elements coming through, and it doesn't feel like anything's been compromised either. It really feels like they're blended seamlessly.
Yeah.
I'm excited for people to hear this record.
I'm excited to hear it.
Very excited. I don't know. It's neat.
So the new material, any sort of release date at this point? There's a single out right now.
Ideally, the record comes out in September.
Cool. Does it have a title?
Nadia and I lived together. We are roommates. And I walked into a room one day and there were all these graphs on the wall and lists of the songs and high points and low points. And it was just different versions of the track listing. Yeah. Visually placed on the wall. And the one that we both really, I think, fell in love with was what she called Sisters.
The Sisters.
And it's each, it's two songs that sort of feel right together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's sort of the sequence of it.
Yeah. So I had put the most work into that track listing because I had done, I think, 6 ideas for track listings and I had plotted each of them in terms of their arc. So my room, it looks like an insane person lives there. Yeah. I mean, it's probably not even refutable at this point. So should I be ashamed of it? I don't know. But so I plotted out the story arcs based on kind of emotion of the song, but also, actually no, just emotion. Purely feeling, what does the song make me feel like? That plays into how an arc works in story,
Let's talk about the multimedia component to this band, because Nadia, you direct and produce the videos.
Yes.
So obviously you've got some filmmaking experience, some background. What comes first? What was the music first, or film first, or what's sort of the primary creative outlet, and what's secondary if there's one?
Oof. I mean, I went to film school and I have a degree in that, but I was musician first. But before I was a musician, I was drawing as a kid, so I would imagine that visual art is my first art, I guess. Okay. And I paint. I like to compose stuff. I like to take photos. I like to film. I love visual storytelling, and I like to write. Yeah, so it would have been visual art, then writing, then music. At the same time as theater, filmmaking, back to music, because I realized after I left film school that I needed to be a musician.
Do you feel the interaction between like a musical creative standpoint and a visual creative standpoint is more important now in like 2019 than it would have been in previous years? Because I see a lot of bands coming out now where the storytelling in like a video is so important and interacts so well with the song. Like This Is America, like Childish Gambino, I thought was a perfect marrying of those two.
Absolutely.
I feel like July Talk has a similar thing where their videos are all very, they tie together really well aesthetically, and they all have a unifying theme that ties really well to each of their songs, stuff like that. Do you find that is growing in the music and even visual artistic communities?
I think it's become much easier for people to marry the two, like digital technology being what it is. Like with your iPhone, you can shoot a music video and make it look pretty darn professional. Absolutely. You know, you can record an album on your laptop. You know, so I think it's just easier. You know, so people can actually put the effort into thinking about that. It's not, you know, you spend a week in a studio. Well, now I'm tired. I just want to lie down. But now it's like, you know, you record your album and you're like, okay, how do we sell this? I think is another big part of it.
I always think back to the Beatles making movies. They were making full feature films. And actually, like, specifically Hard Day's Night, the comedy in Hard Day's Night, it pushes the envelope in terms of what a massive musician is supposed to be doing. You know, that came out, what, like 1965? But, like, it was their first feature. And they just kind of, you know, they did exactly what they wanted to do. But the thing is that, like, film is so expensive. Why would musicians and producers and labels at that time necessarily put in the money for that kind of expense? Of course the Beatles could do it. They had the money. Now people can express themselves and be creative and use as many different types of media as they want because it's cheap. And that is so important. Accessibility for the artist changes the game hugely.
Yeah. When you're talking about all this sort of conceptual stuff, and I think we all have an image of your room now with like charts and things. Yeah.
The set of A Beautiful Mind.
Yeah.
Oh my God, no. I need a shed. That's really what I need. I need my own shed. I can, like, my room can be just normal. Oh, a normal person lives here. Like, everything's fine. And then you go into the shed and it's just terrifying.
Because that's not creepy at all.
There's something creepier about having a second location for that.
Let me take you into my shed. Yeah.
And nobody goes into the shed. That's the whole
No one comes out of the shed either.
Like, I'm just sitting there at the end of the room, and anytime, like, anybody's, oh, hi. Yeah, this is my regular life. Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to ask.
It
wasn't about sheds. No.
Where can you find a decent shed
no,
on
I was
sale?
I'm wondering, actually.
I was curious, with all this conceptual stuff, when you do the videos, do you sort of have an idea of what the video is going to be like at the time of writing the song?
I think the only video we went into with any sort of a concept of a script was the first one, was Late Night Girls. And even that, like, we sort of got lost in experimenting that night, and it became a whole different...
Fantastic.
Which was, which turned out really well. Although I guess, like... Health was such a simple concept that
Health
that
had
was...
like a sentence, and that's all it needed.
Yeah, it was locked in pretty quickly over Thanksgiving dinner.
Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah. One of, like, my favorite Thanksgiving dinners, to be honest.
That was a good one, yeah.
We went to, he and I went to the Iron Duke. We just had dinner together and...
discussed video options. And that one just came... It was so quick.
Yeah.
So quick.
With all of the concepts for these videos, I really wanted to work with time. I mean, in film was all about time. Film is entirely to do with how you're going to work within a certain time frame, what's happening in this hour, what's happening in these 5 minutes. How long is that hour actually going to be? Is that hour actually going to be 30 years? Is that hour actually going to be 30 seconds? Because you can do that. Mm-hmm. You can make a 2-hour long film. Actually, in actuality, for this character, it's 30 seconds long. So I wanted to experiment with time. Each of these videos involves a specific concept to do with simultaneous action, experimentation, and anticipation, which are all, again, like these are all like very like basic concepts in filmmaking that help push a story forward and drive it. but each of them experiments differently with those concepts.
Well, while we're still on the subject of filmmaking and collaborativeness, if that's a word, I don't even know.
Collaboration.
Yeah, that's the one. Hey, there
I
we
will
go.
speak on your behalf.
Yeah, collaboration. There's all the syllables I need. You guys contributed to the soundtrack to Who is Bruce Kaufman, which premiered at Kingston Canadian Film Festival earlier this year. To answer the question, Bruce Kaufman is a local poet. How did you guys get involved in that project? What was that like? And you called him a dear friend. How do you guys kind of know each other? How does that interaction happen?
I know Bruce pretty well from... I like to read my poetry at his events. I've only actually read poetry at his events. And he is really, really supportive of the work that I bring to the table. So he's just a really important part of poetry in Kingston. He's just a really, really wonderful support for that.
I've been to a few of his events, and yeah, it's just such a sort of inviting and inclusive kind of event. Yeah. He's really good at kind of putting people at their ease.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that can be very stressful.
Oh yeah.
It is stressful.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. The amount of poets that come out to those events, just the openness of that community and the willingness to come out and the enthusiasm is just it's awesome. And he's the man who makes that happen. He's that community builder. There are a lot of people, I think, who really appreciate the fact that he's willing to come out and do what he does. He's great. So.
While we're talking about senses of community and stuff in Kingston, the Artel played a role in the formation of this band. And it's one of those unique Kingston music spaces that unless you've kind of experienced it, it's hard to describe to outsiders. But do you want to expand on how it kind of helped in the formation of this band and any experiences you guys have, any memories of the Artel?
I mean, I played a few shows there with my old band Carvings, and it was just always just such a scene, just like a bunch of sweaty teenagers and 20-somethings crammed into a living room, watching you at the back, and it was just a lot of fun. And what a cool experience, house shows are few and far between, and that was one of the coolest venues in Kingston. I'm sad it's gone.
I do really, 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 really want a venue in Kingston that is like a dingy basement. I really want a dingy basement somewhere.
It would be nice to have...
make that happen.
Yeah, it would be nice to have another sort of all ages venue that is accessible, because it seems like when I was in high school, we do have 12 Cat.
Awesome.
But when I was in high school, there were all these YFC and in Belleville there was the Irish Hall and the Engineers Hall, and there are all these places that you could just go on a Saturday night, hang out with your friends, pay $5 to go see some bands.
Yeah.
And it sucks that it's almost now just entirely a bar scene.
But could be we don't know about
that is entirely possible. That is entirely possible.
That makes me feel so old and sad. All the kids are talking about the venues on Snapchat.
Yeah. Leaving us in the dust.
Yeah. I don't know. I want that. I want a basement that has like a smoke machine and some lasers. Yeah. And maybe one light bulb with a cement floor.
Hopefully hanging.
This can go under your murder shed.
But hanging.
Yeah, kind of. Oh man, this is my ideal living situation.
This is your
right
bat
now.
cave.
Oh my
The
god.
creative shed, not the murder shed.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful mind shed, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. But yeah, I want that basement. So I don't have it. Sad.
I love a creatively vague description of anything. And on your Facebook page, you describe the project as fake prom plus abandoned building plus three-legged cat. What does that mean?
I had a three-legged cat a couple months ago. I mean, fake prom in an abandoned building was what we originally described ourselves as when we were a duo. It just kind of felt like that because there was something kind of Dave has a certain prom feeling to me. Actually, there are certain songs, even on this record, that feel prom-y to me.
Yeah, there's a romance.
Yeah, when a song makes you picture slow motion in your head, or a beautiful person at the end of a hallway that you're seeing for the first time, that is the same thing I'd say as like being at a fake prom. Similar feeling, similar kind of like, what's going on? Like, what is this? You know? So that's that part of it. There's something kind of light to it as well. And then abandoned building is there's like definitely a sound to abandoned building. Like there's this gray, kind of dirty aspect to it. Like this is kind of been left to rot. There's some neglect here. And there's definitely that darkness in the sound. Three-legged cat. It's kind of cute. It's kind of sad. You kind of want to take it in. Oh, you sad cat. Yeah, so that's the feeling. I feel like the music kind of speaks to that. It's going to change a little bit.
That was way more depth than I think either of us were expecting from that question. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like a really long-winded speaker. I don't know if that is... Yeah.
You're also a really good hand talker. I kind of wish we had like a video recording of this podcast that we could play without context. Because all of the, like, you're describing these concepts with these like really detailed hand actions that I wish I just could use in the podcast somehow.
Maybe
we should draw a chart.
Feel it. Draw a chart?
The different hands and what they mean.
Three-legged cat.
Yeah. That was great because nobody could see that. There were actions for that too. She was for those at home. Yes, she was cradling the three-legged cat.
Yeah.
I found this while I was kind of researching for the podcast, and this quote really, really spoke to me. It's from Mac Cameron of Dominionated.ca. He said, yeah, another carvings veteran. But he said, speaking of your band, he said, there's this very particular, nearly indescribable vibe that comes from musicians from Kingston, and she has it in droves. Part confidence, part attitude, part earnestness, and utterly unpretentious weirdness. Would you say that gels with your experience as a Kingston band? Is there anything you'd kind of want to add to that statement?
I'd say that's a pretty accurate statement. Yeah, Mac... He's very eloquent with his words. He knows, and he knows us fairly well now. He knows you fairly well now through correspondence, but obviously was very, very excited to hear I was playing music again after Carvings, and was very, very excited when he came to see us for the first time. And obviously was very, very excited when he was writing that beautiful review for us.
Yeah, it was a really lovely review.
Yeah.
Benjamin Nelson, since we stopped collaborating, has been replaced by our friend Keel. But Ben, when he was in the band, talked about the uniqueness of Kingston artists. And I think that's really, like, his point, I think, is pretty poignant here. Kingston sits in this perfect place between cities, right? Like, when you're in Kingston, you can spider out when you tour. So you can, like, okay, I'm going to go to Toronto for a night. I'm going to go to Montreal for a night. Maybe I'm going to go to Montreal, Ottawa, and then I'm going to come back to Kingston. You know, and then I have all these tiny towns that I can go to, too. And if I wanted, I could drive 8 hours to New York. And then you got Hamilton, you got London, too. And they're really accessible places. With Kingston, like, you get this kind of, this influence. It's like a cloud sitting over it, where it's a little bit gray. You feel a little bit like an outsider looking in because you're not in a large hub, but you're not in a tiny town either. And Benjamin Nelson would talk about the weirdness of that and like the feeling, like, you know, like Tragically Hip is weird. Sarah Harmer, she's got something different going on. Even like the Glorious Sons, the Wilderness too. There's something in every artist that comes out of Kingston that feels like it's an outlier. You don't quite belong in any one of those large cities necessarily. You might be able to ingrain yourself in those cities, but even if you did, you would have something different. There's something a little bit different. Not sure what it is, but I imagine it has to do with placement and transience, because our industries our 5 main industries are all industries where if you live here, then you can see, you live next to transients in life, and all the time. Healthcare, education, prison, military, tourism. All part of the way that we live day to day, all highly transient industries. So I think that also plays in the fact that we rely so heavily on tourism and university when those people are coming in and coming out and coming in and coming out and going, and they are such significant industries here. People go through like intense relationships when they're here with people who are not necessarily going to stay. But they will say, I would come back to Kingston and grow old here. So it's an interesting experience. Sometimes it's hard to reconcile the feelings I think that one has here. But I think it's important to who we are as artists.
That might be a good spot to end it.
Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Nadia, Ben, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
And we're going to hear good news.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, is this going to be the premiere of the song? Or is it
This is the premiere of Good News.
by Deux Trois on Kingston Live?
Thank you.
I'm gonna get excited.
July 6th, The Treetops with Oak Ridge Avenue and Saf Decaf at the Mansion.
July 9th, Buck Cherry is at the Ale House.
July 19th, Alexa Goldie's single release party at the Mansion.
Also July 19th, Celtic Kitchen Party at Battery Bistro, probably the most scenic venue in Kingston.
Oh yeah, definitely. July 27th, Oak Ridge Avenue again at the Toucan.
Slightly out of our jurisdiction, but worth noting that August 9th and 10th, Voodoo Rock Fest is happening, and that features Kingston bands Days of Thieves and Goldwing.
Also August 9th and 10th, slightly out of our jurisdiction in the other direction, because there's a water hazard, Wolf Island Music Festival going down. Born Ruffians headlining this year. They are Wolf Island Music Festival alumni, and they are great.
Almost not worth mentioning because it is sold out, but August 19th is Back to the Farm.
That festival is always magic. There's something great about just a farm festival, great bands, dogs running around, there's a swimming hole.
Yeah, well, again, the dogs. Lots of happy dogs, and hence happy people.
We need to interview some dogs on this podcast. August 27th, no confirmed dogs at this one, but Limestone City Blues Festival taking over the Limestone City.
And if by chance you haven't heard already, the Glorious Sons wrapping up their summer tour in Kingston at Richardson Stadium September 21st. Get tickets. Now, lots of exciting regular stuff happening this summer. Starting with Music in the Park. That's every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, 12:30 at Confederation Park.
You got Downtown Country Thursdays at 7 o'clock, also at Confederation Park.
And Thursdays are very busy. Also on Thursdays at Pan Chancho, they're having their Backyard Barbecue series, and that's featuring a number of acts this year. Greg Ball, The Wilderness, Chris and D, lots of others.
Also Thursday nights, catch some campfire songs at the McLaughlin Woodworking Museum.
Big Band Fridays happens every Friday at 7 p.m. at Market Square.
Sounds on Sydenham Street are going down on that stretch of Sydenham between Princess and Queen, Saturdays at 1:30. Also right in front of Kingston's best barber, I would say, Howard at Total Look.
I've been always a Paul Rizzo guy.
Oh,
he's on Barry, yeah. You know, he's actually, has nothing to do with music. He's been in business since 1969.
Dang.
He's been doing that for 50 years.
That is wild.
It is. Firebird Sessions, live jazz Sunday afternoons every day in the summer at Musiki.
And of course, lots of other regular stuff happening year-round. Tuesdays are open mic at Musiki and jazz night at Olivea.
Wednesdays, open mic at the Rosencrown with Tom Savage.
Chris Jackson and friends are every Friday night at Blue Martini.
Also on Fridays at Monty's, Craig Jones and the 20th Century Jazz Band.
Also Fridays, again, open mic night with Scotty at Spearhead.
And of course, live music at the Toucan every Friday and Saturday night. No cover there.
For details on these events and others, along with lots of other things to do, places to eat, and places to stay in Kingston, check out visitkingston.ca.
When we record these interviews, they're usually done maybe like a week or two apart. It's difficult sometimes to coordinate everybody's schedules, get everybody in the same place at the same time. In this particular instance, we are without Riley Jabour for this segment because he's, in the time of this recording, he's in Ottawa for the week doing some radio music programming consulting, I believe. So I've invited our writer and my brother Peter to join us today.
Howdy.
Pete is the guy who writes all those wonderful intro bios that you hear that we read.
I write the words and then I hear the words later, to varying degrees of awkwardness for myself.
You don't get to hear it read by people very often.
Not at all.
Well,
no.
These days you do.
Yeah, and it's a strange thing to get used to. I'm much more used to, or at least much more comfortable with the idea of just writing something and then it only appears in someone's head.
As evidenced by last month when I had to change one of the words in Miss Emily's intro because there was an alliteration that you wrote that I could not for the life of me read aloud.
Yeah, my writing occasionally veers into like children's book territory. And it's because I do not think about people reading it out loud.
Yeah,
so,
but you've done a lot of music writing. I mean, you've done writing for Exclaim. I know you did Oak Ridge Avenue's web bio recently.
I write a lot of the time for different indie publications, and I'll do a bit of freelance writing for bands as well. Just, been into music for a very long time, so tried to find a way to do that while also doing the other thing I like.
So here he is, the often heard of but rarely heard Peter Sanfilippo.
live and in the studio.
Yes. Well, live depending, is it live because we're...
Live as in I am alive.
Exactly. Well, here's another of your intros read by someone that is not yourself. Let's give this a shot.
Right.
I don't know if I've even read this aloud yet, so we'll see if there's any alliterations.
Ooh, all right.
Kingston probably couldn't be the musical city it is without organizations like the one we're featuring today. For over 17 years, Joe's Mill, Kingston's music instrument lending library, has been connecting prospective musicians with a wide range of instruments, all free of charge. And we're not just talking guitars and keyboards. The Mill offers an array of brass, stringed, and woodwind instruments, as well as amplifiers, percussion, and everything from banjos to theremins. And we have with us Terry Snider, the president of Joe's Mill.
Great to be here today.
Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
And Chris Morris returns to Titan Sound and Kingston Live.
Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome.
I appreciate being here.
We appreciate having you here. My, this is pleasant.
This is so nice.
This doesn't hurt as much as it sounds like it hurts.
So where do we begin? You're not directly involved in the Mill, but what's your role with Homegrown? What's your title?
So I'm the festival coordinator of Homegrown Live, and I was on the board of Joe's Mill for about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So Homegrown Live is a separate organization, and the whole idea behind it was a big fundraiser for Joe's Mill. The former librarian Roger Eccleston helped put it together with Tom Stewart in 2008, I believe. And, it was just basically came from a conversation over a beer of, the Mill needs more money. What do we do? And, Tom said, let's do this festival.
And it's working. It's been pretty successful, as I understand.
Yeah, I mean, this year was our 11th annual festival, and it was our biggest year yet in terms of numbers of venues, musicians, and the revenue that we brought in and the donation that we gave to Joe's Mill, which was $14,000.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I guess we sort of got a bit ahead of ourselves here. Like, how did the Mill come to be? Because this is a very unique thing. And I find that even in Kingston, I find like even within the musical sort of population of Kingston, a lot of people are aware of it. But there are a lot of people, like I was talking to somebody the other day who was a musician who had no idea that Joe's Mill existed. So how did this come about?
The full name is the Joe Chithalen Memorial Musical Instrument Lending Library. Joe was a very, very prominent, well-liked musician in Kingston from the late 80s until the late 90s. And he passed away while he was on tour in Europe with the Mahones. He was their bass player on and off over the course of a few years. And he ate something in Amsterdam that triggered his peanut allergy. And he didn't have his pen nearby, and he passed away on tour. It was a huge blow to the music scene just because of the sheer number of bands that he played in, and I think he was pretty universally loved in Kingston by musicians and by audiences. Mm-hmm. So it really hit people pretty hard, and there was just a lot of conversations about how do we pay tribute to Joe, beyond kind of the standard way of doing things. And it was Wally High who came up with the idea of a musical instrument lending library in Joe's name.
And I just want to interject here. It's my understanding that Joe used to, after playing with people on stage, maybe for the first time, jamming with them or whatever, would shake their hands and say, it's been a privilege to play with you guys. Wouldn't it be great if everyone had this privilege? And Wally remembered that. And he thought, you know what? Let's take this forward in Joe's memory and make his words a reality.
Wally was not the sort of person to let an idea go by lightly. So he pushed through, and I think it was only 2 or 3 years later that the Mill opened its first permanent location.
They actually opened the first part of the library in the St. College in at a closet in St. Lawrence College Library. But, that lasted for a period of time until Wally, found a place in the basement of the old Robert Meek Center where the Boys and Girls Club was at the time. And there still is some confusion out there. Some people think or thought, and rightly so, because it says Boys and Girls Club on the outside, that Joe's Mill was one of their programs, and it never was.
Okay.
Okay.
It's its own separate entity. It's a registered charity, and it's got its own staff and volunteers and board and everything. So it grew from like this closet at St. Lawrence to how many instruments are there now?
Well, we have over 950 instruments, and that doesn't include all of the extras. Okay, effects pedals, music stands, amplifiers, and there's well over 1,100 items down there.
That's
okay,
amazing.
in Joe's Mill. Yeah, it is, and it's a sort of a taken on a life of its own. Okay, as president, my job was to grow it, to make sure the door stayed open.
Yeah.
Okay, because we receive no funding from government or industry. The community supports us. And there's been a lot of support coming from the community, like Homegrown.
Yeah, I was going to say there's
initiative is
Homegrown.
huge.
What else is keeping this afloat? I'm sure that the money from Homegrown, while it's appreciated, probably isn't enough to keep it afloat on its own, is it?
No, it pays our rent.
Okay.
Okay, and utilities, which is wonderful because, we have to have our rent and utilities paid. Mm-hmm. And of course, like any other business, and it seems like a business, except we don't charge for our product. Okay, we have all the other overhead that a business would, insurance. When I talk to people about the funding of it, okay, I call it the bumblebee of businesses. And they say, well, what do you mean by that? So, well, if you talk to aeronautical engineers, bumblebees shouldn't fly. Okay, but they do, and they don't know why they fly, but they're really not aerodynamically designed. Okay, they just power through it. I guess they're very powerful.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So.
Yet another podcast idea.
I learned something today.
So the bumblebee of businesses is like, this shouldn't fly, but it does, and it's magic. Okay, because the community supports it. We have a campaign in the fall where we send emails and cards out to people, telling with newsletters now. We've become very sophisticated compared to where we were. We were doing about 450 loans a year then. When I joined, we're doing over 6,000 now. And so that's 12,000 transactions. Okay, and it's not like throwing a book in a hole in the wall when you bring it back. You can't do that with your guitar, right? Yeah. Or your set of drums. No, please don't.
There's no drop-off slot for guitars.
Slot. Yeah. Drums here. It's a garage door. You throw them down a chute, basically. Roll them in. Yeah.
We're grateful that it does fly despite its bumblebee physicality. It's such a great resource. Are there any other communities that have this? Because it sounds like this is a Kingston thing, right?
There's been a lot of copycats that have. We've had emails from people in California, from various states.
I was in Scotland last September, and we came down through the Orkney Islands, and I stopped into this. There's not a whole lot going on in Orkney in terms of population, but there's this sort of community center in the main city, and they had a poster on the wall talking about an instrument library. And I walked in, I'm like, this is amazing. Let me tell you all about Joe's Mill. They were just sort of blown away that I think they thought that they had started it.
Well, I was going to ask, can we take credit for this? Did this start in Kingston?
As far as we know.
As far as we know, it was the world's first real instrument lending library. Okay, there were a couple of places that we saw. We started researching this 10 years ago. What's out there? Okay, and maybe they got some great ideas. There was nothing out there. We saw the odd thing. Some guy ran a little tool library out of his garage, where he would rent tools out, and he added a couple of instruments, and he would rent them out. But there were no free instrument lending libraries, and nothing to the extent of what the organization and number of instruments that we have. So as far as we know, it was the first real library, and library as in. It's not a rental space. Our original library administrative coordinator, Roger Eccleston, he calls rental the R word, and he fines people for saying it. He's a sort of, tall Yorkshireman and, wants things to be right, and rightly so, because it is not a rental place.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask about that. What's the process? Like, it's summertime. I'm sure there are parents looking for things for the kids to do. Let's say they want to get them into music. How does somebody get started with Joe's Mill?
Okay. They have to visit the library during the hours, which are posted on the website.
Which is?
joesmill.org.
Yeah. If they go on the website, they should be within a 50-kilometer radius of the TET Center. Okay, and that's our lending area. And we have a $15 charge. That's a cost recovery for us processing and getting them a card and a member, a borrower's card and some of the other paperwork we have to do. And they have to bring ID with photo on it, government photo ID, and a piece of mail dated within the last 30 days addressed to their address, like utility bill or something like that. That's because that's proof of address, really. Like technically your driver's license should be, but we have a lot of students coming into town. They don't change their address on their driver's license.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that's the process. Go in and sign up. And if you're 16 years of age or older, you can sign up yourself. If you're under 16, then you have to have someone who is a parent, authority, or guardian come with you and sign up.
And then they've got access to so many instruments. Yeah, like but when Pete wrote this, I was like, they have a theremin? Is there really a theremin?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, there is.
What's like the weirdest instrument that you have there?
Well, there's some pretty strange things that are used by...
Like the thunder sheet.
the thunder sheets are neat.
What is that?
It's like a gong, but it makes thunder.
And that was used by Jerry Mercer in April Wine. That's where we got it.
Wow.
The drummer for April Wine, Jerry Mercer.
Yeah, okay.
We also have the bell, ding, 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 from Ooh, What a Night.
Oh, neat.
From the
same one.
The actual bell.
The actual bell.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's been really generous.
Oh, yeah.
He's sent over practice pads and all these
kinds
weird
of stuff.
percussion things and
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And we have some very strange instruments like African instruments, Mongolian instruments that are quite exotic, and they don't go out a lot. But because we're a world-class university town, people come here with their Urdu from, or wherever it's from, or whatever instrument, and donate it. And so we have them in there in case you ever want to record with one. You should go check it out.
There's quite the array of instruments.
Oh, yeah. There's some interesting stuff in there.
That's amazing.
There's some pretty exotic things.
Well, if anybody's listening to this and they're looking for the theremin, don't bother, because by the time this is released, it's most likely going to be in this room with me trying to figure out how it works.
It's actually one of the things that Joe's Mill does and has done over the years. We've partnered with other places, and 5 years ago was myself, Karma Tom, who is the director of music for Queen's Community Music, and Jan LeClaire, who is the principal at First Avenue Public School, got together. We're all musicians. Jan's a wonderful accordion player. She's toured all over the place. And Karma was a world-class violinist. I mean, she has a master's in music. She was on David Letterman, played all really, really great. And what they came to me with was, we want to start a Sistema program. I said, well, I sort of heard about this, that Venezuelan thing, right? Yeah, and it was started in Venezuela years ago for street kids, basically. And what it is an orchestra. Gives them a reason to get up in the morning, gives them something to focus on, and takes them away from that life that they're in, okay? And Venezuela is a very heavy, drug-oriented life for the street kids. And so the principles of it runs from the school, and First Avenue is further North End school, and now it's at Molly Brant because First Avenue closed. And it's basically focused on children at risk. They get a couple of hours of dedicated, focused music instruction in little groups, and then an ensemble when they get together. 4 days a week after school, they get a snack. They learn to do some yoga and meditation to become more present, and then they focus on this work. And so it's strings. So it's violins, violas, cellos, and this year we got an upright bass.
Awesome.
Which is awesome. And so it's for up to 40 children in the program. And right now I think we have about 52 instruments. So Joe's Mill supplies the instruments and maintains them for the program.
That's great.
Yeah, and so that was our contribution to it, aside from helping to organize it and getting it all set up. And we're heading into the 5th year now. And every year in May of this year, I think it was May 5th this year, I can't remember, they have a concert at the Isabel Bader Center, which their families come to, and the kids play on stage. And
that's great.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
This is what I love about this city. The more we have these discussions, the more I find all this amazing stuff that's happening that you don't hear about.
I love the idea in Venezuela that in order to discourage kids from taking drugs, they taught them music.
Yeah.
So everything else I know about musicians, so backwards. That's not how it works.
Well, it gives the kids something that they may not have. First of all, the opportunity, okay? Because I can pretty well guarantee that a lot of the children who are at risk, their families can't afford to either purchase or rent, let alone pay for lessons for an instrument. They learn teamwork. They learn to listen, which is really, really important. Okay, to actually listen to what's going on. As you well know, you can't play with other people if you're not listening to what's going on. Well, sorry, they won't play with you if you're not listening to what's going on. Yeah. Okay, and you learn that very quickly. They learn focus. They learn discipline. They learn structure. They learn to look after their instrument. This program is developing great adults. Okay, if they can take these lessons forward, these are all the things that employers are looking for. Okay, focus. Okay, discipline. Okay, show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, and say please, thank you, and
Teamwork.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's all you need to do. Okay, and why some adults haven't figured this out, I have no idea. Okay?
They didn't learn music.
They didn't learn music. Yeah. Discipline, focus. Their school grades have been improving. Their attendance is improving.
That's great.
Yeah, because it really music changes the brain, and there's been many studies done on that.
So let's get back to Homegrown. Chris, this is a big production. Is it ever difficult to get musicians involved? It's a pretty big event. It's all over downtown and everything.
Yeah, no, it's not at all. We are sort of... The biggest problem we had this year was, when we opened up the applications for almost every venue, and every venue is sort of loosely divided by genre, we had too many applications. So, my attitude is if people want to play at Homegrown, by God, let's let them. Like the more musicians we have, the better it is for Homegrown, for Joe's Mill, and for the music scene in general. Because a lot of people play Homegrown. They don't play any other shows around the year. There might be people that just do open mics and they kind of psych themselves up to play one show and it's Homegrown. And so many people do it because they knew Joe, or because they've been borrowers at Joe's Mill, or they just love the idea of it, is that sort of thing. So we ended up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 450 individual musicians.
Wow.
And like I said, a lot of them are super amateurs. They're playing their first show. They don't play very much at all. And there's a lot of professionals as well that play because they see the value in Joe's Mill. They love Joe. They want to support the scene, and they see, how all these things really work together. So it's pretty amazing how many people really want to play.
Well, and that's such a great legacy for Joe, the fact that it still resonates after all these years.
It truly is, yeah. And, Joe was 100% full-time musician. He taught, he played, he recorded, he wrote, and there's not a lot of people that can say that they do that in a town the size of Kingston. But, Joe believed in the value of live music. He believed in music in general. He believed that musicians should get paid for their work and this sort of thing. So, all that stuff still really holds true for our scene today.
Well, guys, this is a great resource, and we're so grateful to have it in Kingston. Thank you very much for coming in today, Terry, Chris.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. This is great.
And that website, once again, if people want to borrow instruments or if they want to get involved with Joe's Mill?
joesmill.org.
This has been Kingston Live. We encourage you to rate us on your listening platform of choice and subscribe where possible. Kingston Live was recorded in Kingston at Titan Sound. Hosted by John Sanfilippo and Riley Jabour. Writing and research by Peter Sanfilippo. Executive producer Rob Howard. A big thanks to the support of our friends at Tourism Kingston who helped make this podcast possible. Check out the latest live music listings and many other experiences the city has to offer at visitkingston.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Email your thoughts, ideas, comments to podcast@kingstonlive.ca.